What's going on, workforce? Brian and Chris here, the prophets of video game news, coming to you.
The wild predictors, and we live in the world of the wild.
That's right. That's how it is, guys. Thanks so much for being here. We're talking obviously about the latest acquisition news of Microsoft purchasing Activision Blizzard for $68.7 billion. This brings about the best franchise in all of history, Candy Crush. Like, I think honestly, when I saw the Zynga news yesterday or the day before, I was like, oh, okay.
Last week, right? With Take-Two and Zynga.
Yeah, it's there's this big push into owning like mobile studios. King being a part of the Activision Blizzard, it's kind of like the silent partner. Like, yeah, we know we still make a ton of money over here, but don't associate us with all the drama of recent Activision Blizzard. Chris, does this like is this an ointment, a healing lotion for like World of Warcraft and all the drama that is contained within that?
So when Microsoft bought Bethesda, we thought it was odd that they kept so much of the leadership structure intact.
Mm-hmm.
That they were like, we're just going to let it be for a bit. That doesn't mean that those people's jobs are safe. That could just mean we just want to watch how it's running now before we fix anything. Let's see where the problems really are.
Right. And we've seen Microsoft in the past.
We can allow some people to graciously retire.
Yeah. With a nice severance package.
We usher in the Microsoft era of Bethesda, if there needs to be one. If it turns out all Bethesda needed was an adult in the room and they're going to just crush it and all the games are going to come out on the same engine as the same game and tear it up, then they're in good shape. And so it could be that's all this needs, but it does feel like it has the same hallmarks where the first thing you note is like right at near the top of the announcement, they're like, and Bobby Kotick will stay in charge. And you're like, okay, so from the top down, this is going to look a lot alike, but this is 10,000 employees.
They already had Microsoft employees move over to Activision Blizzard over the last like year, like all before all this like drama started unfolding. Like it started, I was like, man, they got a lot of Microsoft employees, former Xbox leadership moving over to Activision Blizzard, which was like, that's interesting. And then obviously as the stock price like dropped, it was like, well, something's going to happen. And it makes sense. They're buying them for $95 a share.
Yes. Now this would close sometime in next fiscal year. So
yeah, 2023.
So you're looking at least a year from now. So like this thing could still fall apart. But it's a big announcement. I think that the exciting thing about it is it means Diablo and Gamepass day one.
Yeah.
It means
Overwatch.
Because remember, so for anybody that hasn't followed Xbox,
yeah,
and maybe you don't own an Xbox, but you do have a PC, Game Pass had made a promise when it first came out that all first-party games would be free on Game Pass day one, and date, like right from the get-go. And so that does mean Halo free in Game Pass day one, and that would mean by extension Diablo
4.
Yeah, Diablo 4 right there in Game Pass. What happens with World of Warcraft? Does that go into Game Pass? So, what happens? Like for those of you who say, I won't pay $15 a month to play that game. Fine, you don't have to. But will you play it if it's baked in?
Here's what we know. So let's look at a little bit of history right now and talk about what World of Warcraft Game Pass means, because we have long wondered if Final Fantasy 14 would come into the Xbox ecosystem and have any kind of connection with Game Pass. Microsoft also owns another massive MMORPG, Elder Scrolls Online. No subscription. So there's no like, hey, this is a subscription-based MMORPG currently. And obviously with the drama around it, like it's just been, I think, a big kind of like what's going to be the future of World of Warcraft. Does Game Pass supplement the WoW subscription? And if it does, what does that look like? And I honestly think, yes. I think when you look at this as a subscription-based MMO, just like when people are like, oh, New World needs a subscription, I go, they have one. It's called Prime. Like if you've got Amazon Prime, you're getting New World like loot and all this like little, these little like, hey, it's the idea of that it's not about one subscription. It's about we're trying to make the subscription valuable to all. And even Netflix commented their biggest competitor is sleep, right? So when you think about it, it's like, how do we drive so much value that if you're a World of Warcraft subscriber, why aren't you now a Game Pass, Ultimate subscriber? Because World of Warcraft isn't on Xbox. Does that mean, though, that there's a pathway for that in the future? And I think it would still be a while away, even outside this acquisition. What do you think?
I think that pathway falls under Phil's statements about what he was going to do with Sony exclusives, because Microsoft owns PlayStation exclusives and has kept those PlayStation exclusive.
Yeah.
First of all, they're going to honor every contractual deal. We've not seen anything so far where they've used some legal shenanigans where they're trying to rip things. They have done that. But Phil also said he does not want to pull any game from where it has a community.
Right.
So what that most likely means is when they buy something like Bethesda's Starfield, right? And so Starfield hadn't come out. And so since Starfield hasn't come out, he can pull that exclusive and he's not technically hurting anybody. There's people that had expectations to play it that have PlayStations and he hurts them, but that's very different than if he had like pulled Elder Scrolls. And so he's not going to do that because honestly, that's not good for their bottom line. But also just remember, like, Phil Spencer is and has been so far, like, he's always acted like a gamer. He plays a lot of games.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things I've always appreciated about Phil. And so I think, you know, would this pull games from PlayStation? That's going to be on a title by title basis, but I bet a lot of new titles moving forward, they're going to need to recoup somewhere in the ballpark of 60 to 70 billion dollars. So they're going to want some
just
of that,
a little bit of coin,
just like a tiny bit of pocket change. But they're also very well aware that, like, gaming is a massive industry and it doesn't only exist in their ecosystem. And so having their kind of tendrils out there to invite people in, I mean, and to make money on other platforms, that all makes sense. It doesn't hurt them to do that. There was a point where, as PlayStation 5 was coming out, there was a very real worry that Microsoft was going to have more games available on PlayStation 5 than Sony was.
Yeah.
Like, Microsoft's crushing it and they don't need you to have an Xbox to be a part of it.
Well, and I think that philosophy is healthy for me as a gamer because I can get behind a timed exclusive, but the console exclusivity, it doesn't play in a world of, hey, I actually play on PC where, oh, now I have God of War. Now it's like at some point, like if this is the area that gamers play, then all of a sudden, like if you're not cross-platform, you're going to struggle. One of the things I've advocated for is Halo on PlayStation, because I felt like as a franchise, Halo is suffering because it is not on PlayStation. And what dominated? Call of Duty. Now, Microsoft actually owns Call of Duty, and I question, will we see a laxing in the constant annualization that Activision has been so drumbeating towards? You know, buy all your cosmetics again every year.
Generational. Like, I wish I could buy, even if it was 3 separate franchises, because they are kind of 3 separate studios. I wish that my Modern Warfare carried into my Modern Warfare, and that my, you know, like, I wish they carried so I could invest in an ecosystem. Because what's frustrating is they're asking me to buy skins. Some of those skins coming out months into the release for a game that disappears after 12 months.
Right.
And so it really feels, I don't know, it feels predatory. Like, so you have a lot of kids. And so when I go to somewhere like Medieval Times and they bring around the shiny thing, and I know they're coming up on the end of the show and it's glowing and it's blinking and you know it's going to be dead the next morning, and they're waving that in front of kids, that feels predatory to me. Them selling swords in the lobby at $9 billion a piece doesn't bother me.
Right.
But them selling the little glowing thing that's just going to be trash in the bottom of your car 5 minutes before the end of the show, like, I don't know where the threshold is, but somewhere in there, like a microtransaction that goes into a game I play for 3 years, I'm okay with.
Right.
So I don't know where my threshold is, but I do know that, like, rapidly expiring microtransactions feel gross.
Well, let's talk about Warzone though, because it's like you have Warzone, which essentially solves kind of that because it's one game, but we've still seen this mindset within Activision of the annual, like, okay, we got to hit this every year. I wonder if we'll see that kind of scale back. I wonder if we'll see Overwatch 2 blend into just Overwatch now. Because essentially they've kneecapped
still
themselves.
Make $69 billion. So, like, I mean, you gotta remember, Call of Duty makes a fair bit up until recently. So I think they need to remove whatever frustrates, but they do need to keep it a cash cow.
I still think Call of Duty would be a cash cow, and that's why I would think Microsoft wouldn't want to pull that off of PlayStation. I think that's where it's like, it's a multiplayer game. Why would we kneecap ourselves with this franchise?
What if you just make it the BDO of the space and you let Halo be the Final Fantasy of the space?
I guess that works too.
And just let the people who like being
Call of Duty,
be monetized and say, like, we have 2 shooters.
All right. But here's the bigger question, then back to World of Warcraft though. Like, I've seen chat kind of fire off about this, is that finish 10.0 World of Warcraft and then World of Warcraft 2, Unreal Engine 5, like a whole new
X-Cloud.
Of course xCloud. Of course xCloud. Why put a question mark on that? That's a statement. Like, whether they do like Unreal Engine 5, like xCloud in terms of like PC Game Pass. I think this is huge for PC Game Pass. I think it's
Battle.net is still incredible technology.
Exactly. And imagine looping that into your entire Microsoft framework, your Microsoft account, where if you're playing a, Game Pass game wherever, we can still chat to one another, right? Like you talk about
they'll break it. It'll have a Skype tab that makes the thing crash. Like Battle.net works too well.
We've integrated this
I'm actually
with
nervous.
Skype.
I think that downgrades by going into Microsoft. I thought the same thing when it went into Blizzard. The moment Call of Duty hit that launcher, I was like, this got a little bit worse. That breaks it. But the Battle.net launcher is like the one, it's the first thing I notice when I boot up WoW is like, because when I boot up WoW, if I go back, I quit last November, I think. So I've been gone, I don't know, a little over a year. The November before last, when all the news broke. If I go back, I know that I will put the launcher on my computer again. I will log in and it will just work. If I need to buy something, it will take my money. Yeah. Like the Battle.net experience is, in my opinion, second to none as far as getting me exactly what I need, take exactly the amount of money you need to take, and just get me in the game.
How does Sony respond?
So when Microsoft first started buying all this stuff, we said this is the first of many purchases.
This is still not
Bill
done.
said when he bought Bethesda, people were like, "This is huge," and he goes, "This is just the beginning." And he has hit relentlessly purchase after purchase after purchase. This makes them as big as Bandai Namco. What if they buy Bandai Namco? I mean, if they have
that or Amazon,
unlimited amount of money.
Yeah.
And so as he's continued to just go on a rampage purchasing studios, this brings them up to like 30 internal studios or something crazy. Sony has responded quietly. And that doesn't mean not. Something. That doesn't mean not. They've been buying things.
Yeah.
Spider-Man has torn it up both in the theater and on consoles in the recent years.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing their thing. They're letting their games sneak onto PC, so they're doing the same thing he is.
Yeah.
They're going to make money as all of this interest drives. It's not going to be shocking to see their games slowly slide into Game Pass, which probably means money behind the scenes. I mean, even when Xboxes sell, when a PlayStation 5 sells, maybe somebody purchases a Microsoft-owned title for it. When an Xbox sells, there is Sony technology in the box.
Yeah.
So, like, Sony is a hardware company. Microsoft is a software company.
Yeah.
So we need to know whether or not we're purchasing Microsoft because it's right in our face.
Yeah.
Sony can make money without us ever being a part of it.
You know what's funny about that, though? Microsoft makes money off of every game Sony sells because they use their tools, Microsoft tools, to make their games.
Because of the software.
Exactly. Phil Spencer's actually commented on that publicly. He's like, every time Sony sells a game, we make money. Like,
so
go Sony.
I don't think they're. I mean, I do think that they are competing, but I think they're two teams competing in the same league. They need the whole league to make money,
right?
And then it's not in your best interest. This is why in professional leagues drafts work the way they do, where the losing team gets the best draft, because it's not in the best team's interest to push them out of the league, to just make them lose so hard that they fail. They're like, no, I need everybody here, or we don't have a league. We're all making money as a collective group.
So the question then is that there's rumor right now that Final Fantasy is exclusive to Sony and PC. And it's rumor, but it's only Final Fantasy. It's not not the origin title. It's not any offshoot. It's literally like what you would say 16 PC, PS5. And that seems like a quieted timed exclusive. We still haven't seen Final Fantasy 7 Remake on Xbox. We just saw it go into Epic. And so that, I'm going to keep waiting for a little bit before I pick it up. I'm going to wait to see if it comes onto Steam. But that's a huge time deal without ever, acquiring a company. Does Sony see this news and say, you know what, Square, we've already been, we're already really close. Like, we're just neighbors, right? Like that.
No, we haven't told anybody. You have a drawer at my place. Like, you've been here a lot. Like, we need to tell people we're getting married.
We're making this official. Like Facebook official, something like that.
No, they've always been very close.
The question, though, that I've wondered is that if they're hooking with all these massive timed exclusives, like, is that a defense against or a preparation for more acquisition by Microsoft? Meaning, oh, if we have a timed exclusive of Final Fantasy for 5 years and Microsoft goes and buys Square-Enix, we still got Final Fantasy for 5 years. We've got that baked in, contingency plan. What do you think about that?
Sony owned some of Square for a number of years,
and they sold it. They sold it. Yeah.
And so, this kind of brings up that old adage that like nobody ever gets rich from selling things. It's something I've heard from people that are like real estate developers. You don't get rich from selling things. People think you do because it's the fast cash. You get rich from owning things because you can lease and you can continually extract value. You can capitalize something. And so like it does make you wonder, do they go back into owning part of Square? Do they tie them up in an immense number of contracts and back fund? And what does Square need? Because right now Square has cash coming in fast enough that like you picture one of those like movies or whatever where like the cash is just flowing in everywhere. Like I don't know that Square. I think right now, if anything, Square needs somebody to help sort the money. So like, can Sony somehow secure them server space for Final Fantasy? Can Sony somehow secure them? Is there something Sony can do that lets Square-Enix keep their eye on the ball? Because otherwise I don't know what value they provide.
Yeah.
Square doesn't need anybody. They should have done it. They should have done it 5 years ago.
Right.
Yeah, they should have done it 5 years ago.
So like on that note though, like I don't think it's Sony because Sony partnered with Microsoft for cloud gaming and processing. The big three are in the space: Microsoft, Google, and Amazon. And then essentially you also have Tencent out there, which essentially like when you look at this list,
a weird spot because of the way like the Chinese government as they change policies and stuff. Like you see Tencent's stock price affected by government policy.
Right.
So like they're in a weird spot in that like they could be
but internally within China,
anytime.
outside of that, well, right. But every company in China is basically, part of the government in a way. But essentially like outside of that, like those regulations don't apply to outside of the Chinese borders. And that's where they're like, let's profit off those, like those Americans and those Europeans and those Japanese people. But we're going to sit here and be very strategic. It's a very interesting. I've been watching a lot of different social media understandings of how totalitarian dictatorship versus like democracy is affected just by like just our communication. And it's really fascinating. So something for the future here. Chris, you got any final thoughts before we wrap up this insane
I
video?
think this is a big deal. I think it's exciting for gaming to see this much money moving around. The fact that this will likely be in Forbes and New York Times, and I haven't seen all the coverage yet because this is still relatively new, but the fact that this will get reported on even briefly on money trading and stuff, this is the sort of thing where instead of my parents calling me and saying, "What's this? Who's this ninja guy?"
Yeah.
Instead, it's, "Hey, did you hear this about gaming?" Like when they start coming to me with what they feel is new information, like that's exciting for gaming. When the people in my life that are not traditional gamers come to me excited about what is happening in gaming,
like, whoa, Brian, sup, dude? Oh my gosh, Activision Blizzard, like it's people huge. I haven't talked to in a year.
It's huge.
Yeah.
So I think that's what's exciting. That obviously we're talking about it because there is Blizzard in the mix and there is an MMO involved, a big one. And so there is a big question in what happens here. We talked about this with ESO. So that's kind of my thoughts is what happens to the Blizzard side of things. I think the Activision and King side, if it were me, I'd just let them do what they do. Let it ride for a little bit.
Yeah, it's going to take time to spin up a new vision.
You got enough going on.
You have the IP.
You have to go hands-on.
You have the IP. Stuff. You have the IP. The IP is so much more important. You let it ride.
Let it ride.
Okay, it is what it is. But then it's like, okay, here's our, and so like when we talk about 2025, 27, like you're going to see, like this is giant in terms of, if you look at this decade in gaming and the face of MMORPGs. And I do see chat kind of like nobody owns an Xbox in Japan. Actually, Xbox Series S and X and xCloud are dominating in Japan. Like it is the bet, like you've never seen Microsoft have success in Japan until now. And that is something that is actually changing the scope as PlayStation moved to California as their home base. And that's actually impacted Japan in an interesting way. Guys, thanks so much for watching, listening, being here. We love you faces. We'll see you in our next video. We got a lot to talk about as we gear up for an insane 2022. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Like, favorite, subscribe, and share if you did. And we'll see you next time.